Hello, welcome to the Winning Balance podcast. I am met with Sir Dave Allred with me. Thanks for coming on, brother.
Grateful to be here, man. Thanks.
Good. So how I met Dave, Blake Erickson hosted InvestorCon with Brody Fawcett, and he had the VIP, and it was at your house. Absolute beautiful home. But it's funny. The reason I have you on here, Dave, and I told you this, at this phase of my life, it's no longer like I don't really look up to money like I used to. I look up to people who have their priorities in check, whatever that is, and specifically building the business that you have while keeping your family at the forefront of that has been super cool for me to witness. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's not easy, right? Business and ambition, that juggle between business ambition and family. I think a lot of people really struggle with that. And it's been fun. It's been a challenge. I've learned a lot along the way. And I'm really excited to share a lot of things that work for me.
Dude, I appreciate it. I mean, that influence goes far beyond what you probably realize. So it's influenced me, and I appreciate that example. So let's dive into this bio here. Dave Allred is the CEO of Axia Partners, a real estate fund manager and public speaker known for helping others achieve financial freedom through real estate. After leaving home at 17, he became a millionaire by 26 during a 15-year leadership career at Vivint and Vivint Solar, helping both companies go public. At 30, he set a goal to own 1,000 rental units by 40. He hit that goal early, building a diverse portfolio, including multifamily, industrial, and short-term rentals. Dave has personally raised over $50 million, led major projects like Topgolf and Vineyard, which I'm a member of, so shout out Dave on that, and developed assets nationwide. He's one of Utah's top syndicators and now leads Axia's investor relations and fund strategy. Beyond business, Dave is passionate about family, purpose and adventure, traveling to 60 plus countries, climbing Mount Everest, and launching the Allred Family Foundation with his wife and 4 kids. His mission, help others design a life of freedom through passive income and intentional living. Thanks for jumping on, Dave.
Let's go.
I love it. Dude, first of all, someone in our WAT group, Jimmy Rex's program, just climbed Everest and gave us a little presentation of what that entails. I have like a newfound respect for anyone that's done it. That's insane. There's only 7,300 people that have ever done it.
I'm not sure the stats on that one, but just to be clear, so I actually went running with the Bulls with Jimmy's group a couple years ago. It was amazing. But with Mount Everest, it wasn't, we didn't summit. We went to base camp, and then we went up to Island Peak, which is about 23,000 feet elevation.
Yeah.
And so it was pretty incredible. I think it's the 5th highest peak out there in the Himalayas. And but I'd never done any mountaineering, summiting, anything at all. In fact, I think the biggest thing I'd done previously was hiking to the Y here, right? I had my rappelling merit badge with Boy Scouts, and that's about it. So half the group summited, 6 people, and then 6 of us just did base camp and Island Peak. So, and of the 6 that went to Island Peak, 2 of them didn't make it. Sherpas had to take them back down the mountain, but it was pretty intense. It was an amazing experience. I do want to go back and I do want to go back and summit with my son. He's 13 right now, so we're talking about doing that maybe the next 3 to 5 years.
Good for you. I mean, if you're even on Mount Everest, I'm sure that's an accomplishment that I probably won't see because I don't do any of that stuff. But Dave, I mean, first of all, I appreciate you coming out. Like I said, the influence you've had on Utah as a whole has been great, especially for me of seeing like what you can accomplish in the business world, but also within your own household. So I'm excited to dive into that. I'd love to hear, we talked a little bit before recording just about what you have going on with Axia Partners. I'd love for you to dive into what you guys have going on and the excitement there.
Sure. So I've always loved real estate, right? So my first year as a sales manager, with Vivint, I made $156,000. Went to my CPA and asked him, what the best ways to mitigate taxes and what all of his wealthy clients were doing. Because I felt like I was wealthy, right? And he said real estate or buying businesses. And so I knew nothing about real estate. You know, we never talked about investing, business, you know, finances, you know, when I was growing up. And so I decided to become a student of the game of real estate and started studying it, reading all the books, trying to be around people that were doing real estate. You know, luckily, you know, Todd Peterson, a lot of the guys at Vivint were pretty heavy in multifamily. And so that proximity allowed me to really learn and, you know, kind of a shortcut in this process. And so I started buying single family homes. Then I bought a bunch of fourplexes, about 28 fourplexes around Utah, Arizona, and Idaho, and just fell in love with it, man. You know, I wouldn't say I fell in love with real estate necessarily, but I fell in love with the freedom that you can get from that passive income.
Yeah.
And so I realized a long time ago that my core motivator is freedom, right? Financial freedom was the initial focus. And then from there, it went to time freedom, you know, our most precious resource. And from there, it went to lifestyle freedom, which I'd say is living your dream lifestyle now versus waiting for retirement, right? And so just fell in love with it. And one of my own personal mantras in life is always do bigger deals than yesterday. And so it was, you know, townhomes, then it was fourplexes, then it was a 20plex, and then it was a 62 unit, 237 units in Kansas, and just continue to grow it from there. And, you know, but you only have so much personal capital. And so I hit a certain point, you know, I had a goal of 40 rental properties by age 40. And that was going to give me enough passive income, or I call it mailbox money, to have true financial freedom. And I set that goal when I was 40 years old. And it's through this equation that I call the financial freedom equation. And I'm happy to share it with you guys. It's also on my website, daveallred.com. You can download it for free. And it's really simple. It's just saying, what's your total cost of living? Let's say, for example, it's $200,000. And then the next line item is, what's your current passive income? Let's say it's $50,000 from a fourplex or some, you know, dividend stocks or whatever else. Next line item is, what's the gap? $150,000. Next line is, how many years am I willing to commit to achieve this financial freedom? And for me, it was 10 years. And so then the next line item is, well, how much do I need per year in passive income to hit that number? And so in that situation, it'd be $15,000 per year. And so, and as a real estate guy, I just reverse engineered that even further and calculated I need to have 40 rental properties by age 40. So my mantra became 40 by 40. And, you know, I really just got hyper focused on that goal. I wrote it down, and they say you're 42% more likely to hit, you know, a goal if it's in writing. And so, and what it did for me is it helped me not only stay accountable, but also it was highly motivating by seeing those incremental improvements along the way. And so I hit that goal when I was 36. I retired from a 16-year leadership career at Vivint and went full-time into real estate. So I started to syndicate capital for multifamily. I did about a dozen of those across the country, and it was really fun, you know, being able to bring my friends into these type of deals, remove the barriers of entry, and help create that freedom as well as the tax advantages for my buddies as well, right? And so, but then so I reset that goal from, you know, 40 by 40 to 1,000 doors by age 40. And so I hit that goal when I was 40. And at that point, I was like, you know, I want to do this at scale and create a lot more value for a lot more people. And so that's what drove me to launch Axie Partners, which is the real estate firm. And what we do is we focus on recession-resilient commercial real estate. And that's primarily multifamily and also industrial warehouse, self-storage, and RV parks. We're actually very, very bullish on RV parks right now. It creates a great amount of, very high amount of cash on cash return, and then also really strong tax advantages at the same time. And so we've grown the firm for about 5 years now. We have about 430 investors currently. And we just launched our newest fund. It's a $100 million equity raise, and it's going out to acquire distressed value-add multifamily all across the country and destination RV parks. And so these are, so the RV parks, it's really interesting, and we don't have to go into too much detail on this one, but, our investors love cash flow and they love the tax advantages. And so what we do is we do, cost segregation studies, all that on the multifamily and the RV parks. But we polled our investors last year, and there were two things that everybody really wanted, and it was immediate cash flow, and it's distress, right? Where you go and buy a property at 60, 70 cents on the dollar. And so we reverse engineered this investment thesis based on feedback from our partners. Mm. But yeah, $100 million equity raise. So we'll go out and acquire, close to $250 million of commercial real estate over the next year or so. And it's been really fun, man. All these investors are my friends. It's my social network. We've never paid for ads or leads or any of that kind of stuff. It's very organic. And, a lot of that came from having managed 121 sales teams, thousands of sales guys in the past. And so now, instead of creating leadership value for them, right, in the, helping that interpersonal development, now it's more helping them with passive income, financial freedom, learning about commercial real estate and whatnot. And one thing I'm really proud of with the Axie Partners is, our mantra has been experiential investing. And so it's not just creating an ROI, return on investment, but it's also an ROE, a return on experience and education. And so we do a lot with transparency to help teach people how we do what we do. I realized a long time ago that, a lot of people want to be doing these type of large commercial deals. They just lack the competence or the confidence to be doing it on their own. And so it's been a really fun way to be able to create value in a very unique value proposition. And, I went full time into real estate in 2017. I quickly realized that, it's pretty boring, honestly, real estate, right? It's underwriting, it's spreadsheets. I really missed that interpersonal side of the business. And so, I wanted to figure out how to make more of a human aspect to real estate. And so experiential investing, it's been really fun. Really excited about it.
I love it. Well, good for you on doing that. One thing that stuck out to me, what you said, is always to be doing bigger deals than you were yesterday. I feel like that's something that I've struggled with. I feel like I've become an expert in 4 units and below. I'm a realtor, investor, pick up my own units, but I'm like stuck in this small multi world. So it's always been one of my goals to jump into commercial. And yeah, maybe I start with a 8-plex and then jump to a 20, but I appreciate you saying that. So Dave, one thing that I wanted to dive into, something about your story that I look up to a ton, is sort of like the rags to riches aspect of it. That, I can't relate. I grew up in a comfortable home with 2 parents that, like, I had a ton of stability, and I know I wouldn't be where I am without my parents and in that environment. But I also look on the other side of people like you that had to come out of a situation and you became so much of a better human because of it. So I'd love to hear kind of your story growing up and how you turned into Dave Allred because of what you went through.
Sure. Happy to share that. So grew up in a very small town here in Utah, and, it was a very low income home, very dysfunctional. Parents got separated about 1 year at a time, 3 different times, all throughout my teenage years. And just a lot of, dysfunction, honestly speaking. And my older sister ran away when she was 15. When I was 17, I decided to run away, like legit run away, right? So I went out my bedroom window, and I ended up sleeping in I found a semi truck that was unlocked, and they had those little beds, like cots in the back of it. And so slept there for 3 or 4 nights, and finally ended up in a town about 7 miles away. Found this old house, man. It was like caves, the roof's caving in. It was pretty bad. I think the rent was $120 a month there, and so moved in. Later on, my little brother chose to be emancipated, moved out of the home, moved in with me. And so just me and my brother, just trying to, not even thrive, but just survive, and living off of ramen noodles and fast food, and, working graveyard shifts, and just trying to figure things out. And it was rough, man. It was really hard. It was very uncomfortable. And but with all that being said, I'm actually very grateful for that experience, because I feel like it gave me, 2 things. One is it gives me the contrast now with where I am in life to be able to really appreciate that and enjoy it more. But secondly is, I think going through a lot of that, and by the way, love my parents. I'm really grateful as well. I believe they did the best they knew how to do in that situation. But it really gave me this extreme amount of just emotion and whether it's frustration, anger, it wasn't fair, all those kind of emotions. But that gave me this superpower to later on be able to be willing to go and do a lot of things that other people weren't willing to do. And a lot of motivation, a lot of drive came from that experience in my younger years.
I love it.
And also, with my own family now, it's been a huge motivator for me to be able to really try to reset the standard, right? And to see things that maybe weren't managed or that I feel like weren't fair, weren't done the way they should have been. Now it's a huge motivator for me to be able to reset the standard and, be the one person in our family to be able to really reset that standard, whether that's with happiness, resolving trauma, success, legacy, and impact. And it's been a big driver for me, man. And I'm really proud of where we've been able to get to. Still have a lot of work to do, but it's been a really fun journey and real fun what I'd say on that is one last thing is it's all about how you frame things, right? A lot of people, in fact, a lot of people have had, a lot of big challenges and hardships in life, but a lot of times people will elect to take more of a victim mindset there, right? Where it's like, okay, because of this upbringing or because of where I lived or because I didn't have economic means or because of the color of my skin or because of whatever, right? Then that's the reason why they are where they are today. But the truth is, we all get to choose how we frame those type of experiences. And so for me, I decided to make it more of an empowering, motivator for me, where I'm going to frame that as, okay, that was an experience in my life. And now I have the free agency to go and change that and to choose my own destination and write my own chapters of Dave Allred's book.
That's amazing. And it's motivating for me too. Like the only Dave Allred that I know is having an indoor basketball court, hot tub sauna, gym in your house. But to understand you came from $120 rent with a roof that's caving in some random town and now you're able to influence people to the degree you are. I just think that's the coolest thing ever. So, Dave, one thing I wanted to dive into too, just my curiosity of that gap of where you are in this home eating ramen. And then, making 156 grand in a summer, right? Like that's still a lot of money in a summer. It's a lot of money for probably that stage of life you were in. Talk to me through how, what happened in between there for you to become that version of yourself to now you know how to make money. You're providing for yourself to a high level.
Yeah, so served an LDS mission out in Peru, and that was honestly it was really challenging. But I grew so much in that experience, so much more maturity, confidence. Learned how to lead as well, and so that really helped set me up when I came back. And I was going to college, and I ended up being recruited to go out and knock doors in Chicago selling home security systems, and that was really hard, man. Like it was 80% of the team quit. My first year, my first month, I sold 6 accounts, which was really bad. Midway through the summer, I'm at like 22 accounts, thinking about quitting every day. Well, truthfully, every hour probably. It was just like, it was really bad, right? But I decided to stick it out. And I finished the summer really strong, sold 121 accounts, made $31,000, which to this day is the most meaningful money I've ever made in my life. It was more than my parents ever made, and it was enough to come back the next year as a sales manager and make $157,000. And for me, like if you would have asked me when I was a teenager, like best case scenario, what's my earning potential, right? Like $100,000, best case scenario, play all my cards right. And so that really helped break some of those limiting beliefs for me. And next year I came back as a regional manager, made $250,000. Next year $500,000, kind of build it from there. And so, it's interesting though, because if I would have tucked my tail between my legs, like most of the guys didn't quit, it would have completely changed the trajectory of my life. And so there's a lot of lessons, kind of life lessons learned along the way. But, I think that what I've really learned through a lot of that is the value of being comfortable being uncomfortable. Yeah. I think that's such a valuable skill, especially nowadays, man. So many people want to just find the easy way. It's all about instant gratification. And so that concept of delayed gratification is really powerful. And something I'm trying to teach my kids right now as well.
I love that. It's so true. That's something I think about a lot. You think about where media has gone. It's gone from TV shows to 10-minute YouTube videos to 6-second Vines to the gratification is just everything has to happen so fast. But I want to pick your brain a little bit more on that, Dave, is I understand wins can create new openings for like limiting beliefs. Like for example, I was similar to you. I thought, 4 years ago, I said, I need to make 150 grand. Like if I want to go full-time real estate, 150 grand is my bare minimum. And then I started finding my groove, getting some wins, stacking wins. And then last year in a single month, I made 147 grand.
Nice.
And then my beliefs shift completely, right? Like what's possible, and that's not to boast. That's just to say, I saw a win in front of me and it changed my beliefs. You coming from the bottom, like what advice do you have to people that are trying to unlock those wins? Like they haven't seen any wins. They want to understand what's possible, but they just are in that rut. Like what's your advice there?
So many things come to mind. I'll go fast. One, power and proximity. Being around other people that are actually doing where you want to get to. There's real power in that, man. Being able to look at, sit down with somebody and look at in their widen their eyes and like see, okay, if this guy's doing it, it can't be that hard. That's been really important for me. Number two, I would say, is leaning into the idea of, I always say this, but the price of greatness is in balance. And so, I'm big on balance in my life, and, we'll talk about lifestyle design and 10 different areas of my life that I'm trying to, really excel at. But there's times in life where you have to really be okay with, imbalance. And that's just what it takes to be able to really go and do something special, something that's different, something that's not average. With that being said, there's seasonality to that though, where, if it's a new business you just launched or you're going out to do summer sales or whatever it might look like, getting married, it's going to be very imbalanced for a little while. And that's fine. That's how life plays out. But then you want to be able to make up for that. So you got to zoom out a little bit, right? Maybe there's imbalance here, or maybe there's imbalance in one category in life, right? Maybe it's, maybe it's your fitness, maybe it's finance, maybe it's business, maybe it's spiritual. And so you've got to be cognizant of that, but it's okay to be out of balance. But on a macro level, when you zoom out, you really want to have balance, whether that's on a yearly basis or, throughout maybe a certain chapter of life. And so that concept's really served me well. And that imbalance and that focus will change throughout life, obviously, right? When you're 20 years old and you're trying to go and build, it's different than when you're 44 years old and you have 4 kids. And so that's been a big part of it. The third thing I would say is just a relentless pursuit of personal development. For me, that's been everything, to be able to break those limiting belief systems, to be able to actually see the potential and the possibility in things. I think that's really, the root cause of that has been just this pursuit of personal development and always trying to find the best version of Dave Allred. And that's been huge for me. Besides that, the last thing I would say is really getting crystal clear on what's important to you and what the end game is. So many people go through life, just based on, just with a very short-term perspective, looking at, what do they want right now or what fires can be put out. And it's very reactive versus being proactive. And it's based on emotion, right? And it's just kind of, there's a quote that says, most Americans spend more time thinking about their annual vacation than they do about their life, like what they actually want to create in their life. And so we've all, a lot of times you end up, starting to climb a mountain and you realize that mountain's not the actual mountain you want to climb. And so for me, what's been probably the biggest impact for me, besides who I married, has been this lifestyle design principle. And so when I was, I think it was like 25, maybe 26, and I started leading other sales managers, and I realized a lot of times when I sit down and do a one-on-one performance interview, and I ask them, hey, what's your holy cause? Why are you here? What are you excited about? What are you passionate about? And everybody has, a knee-jerk reaction. They want to, buy a home. They want to get a sports car. They want to get get an engagement ring. But when you dive a little bit deeper into it, I was always surprised how much ambiguity there is, and there's not a lot of real clarity there. And so as a leader, I'm like, okay, I want to do a better job personally getting clear on that so I can, one, have that for myself, but also help my leaders have that as well. And so I sat down on a Sunday for 4 hours and I just got to work on it. And so it ended up being, a spreadsheet with 10 different tabs, and it's, my mission statement, which includes my core values, my guiding principles, my non-negotiables, as well as a eulogy, which is an interesting practice because, if you think about what you want people to say about your legacy and your life, your friends, your family, your kids. It really helps you get clear on what is, in your heart, like what's really important to you to make sure you live a life with no regrets and a life of purpose and impact. And so, writing a eulogy was really, but here's one suggestion on that one is when you write your eulogy, don't put in a shared note and then share with your wife without letting her know why you did that. I remember my wife's like, what the hell is that? What is this? Yeah. But yeah, so that's one chapter. And then it's, your health, which is actually, one of the most important things, right? Yeah. A lot of people take their health for granted, but it's actually the one thing that you give everything for to have back. And then it's time, it's family, finances, business, relationships, experiences, and personal development. And so those are 10 chapters, all in writing, exactly what I want to achieve in my life, as well as the keystone habits that I need to make sure I'm following throughout my life to make sure I'm in alignment and on the right path.
That's great.
And so I guess to summarize, what I'm really trying to say is intentionality, right? Like having a clear intention behind why you're doing what you're doing and clear direction on where you really want to get to.
I love it. What point in your career did you get married? When you met your wife?
Yeah, I was 24 years old. So after that first summer, met my wife and went out that next year, that summer, sales manager that first year, and married her in September, right after summer.
And that's like, for people that don't know, the summer sales realm is like you're living in the summer. It's not always the most cush environment for the wife, right? There's a lot of sacrifice there. I just want to recognize her for that. I mean, that was so important. We talk about kind of the journey and what's worked. Having a partner that really supports you, that's your biggest cheerleader, has been instrumental. And I'm so grateful to her for all the support because, especially when I'm out managing, all these teams across the country, I spend about 100 days a year on the road, in hotels, just out, just grinding, man. And, it's a lot of sacrifice, especially when you have young kids at the home. And so she's been incredible. And I'm so grateful for her, man, because, it's really beautiful how, in business, we talk about roles and responsibilities, right? You want clearly defined, delineated responsibilities, roles, and where those handoffs are between the different roles. And my wife, we joke, we got 4 kids, ages 10 through 19. And I've changed a total of 3.5 diapers. The half was a false alarm, right? But she's just incredible. Like I know the home front's taken care of. I've never done any laundry. True story. As being married, and she owns that. She's phenomenal at it, and that allows me the space and the energy to go out and really focus on being a great provider for the family. And so, and again, that's more of a kind of, you call it traditional or whatever, but for us, that works really well. And it's funny that you say that because, 3 years ago, if you would have sat my wife and I together down and told us these are the roles, you don't change diapers, this, blah, 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 we would have she would have laughed and she would have said, I would have probably been like, yeah, let's try it. But now with where I'm at in entrepreneurship and talking to more and more people like yourself, Dave, I realize how important that role is, and my wife the same. And we are definitely taking the traditional route too of it's just hard to explain one, how much mind space the business role takes, two, the financial aspect, paying the bills, organizing that side of life. But then it's on the other side too, as a husband, I understand how much being a mom, running the household takes, and she runs that. I run the business and make sure the bills are paid. And it's when we're clear on our roles, it's been beautiful. It's worked way better for us. And so that's, hearing examples from people like you have helped us a ton. If you want to get to the next level, you have to be clear on the roles, right? So, but Dave, I feel like that's a good transition too of when like I said, I'll reiterate it again, the reason I have you on this podcast is what I witnessed in your own household of you talking about building your kids up specifically when we were at your house and how you're helping them build these businesses and to get this real life experience. And sure enough, the the people of InvestorCon or the VIP section, we are at your house and your daughter comes up with all our freeze dried candy. I'm like, well, he's not lying. Here's his daughter's business. And she was like, it was the coolest thing to see in right in front of me as a good example of how you can teach your kids. And it's not like you forced her what to do. She's picking these colorful candies to sell, and she loved it. So it was cool to see that. But I'd love for you to dive deeper into that, of how maybe you've influenced the life by design with business with your kids. That's kind of a long way to.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to, man. And by the way, I got a lot to learn still, and there's no book, on how to be a good dad, and a good husband, right? So it's something that you learn through practice. And but with my kids, yeah, it's been beautiful, man. Again, we never really talked about finances, business, and that kind of stuff growing up, and so. But it's something I really want to set my kids up to be able to go win in life and be able to create real impact and have leave a positive dent in the universe. And so I've been very intentional with this. The kids, what you're talking about here is last year I set a goal to have all 4 of my kids launch their own businesses as entrepreneurs. And so all 4 of them have launched those businesses. 3 of them are cash flow positive. My son's business is a vending machine business, and so we're close on that one. And my daughter does the freeze-dried candy you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And it's so cool, man. She goes out and knocks doors in the neighborhood, and she's always having supply chain issues because she's always out of inventory. In fact, I think she owes Blake 20 bags that he prepaid. Yeah, I got to get those to him. And then my other daughters do consignment businesses. They're scaling into 3 different malls right now. And it's just so fun, man. Like, as a dad, talk about a proud dad moment when your kids are all running their own businesses. It's their own business plan, and it's really, really cool, man. I love that part of it. All 4 of my kids are also employees of my family's real estate firm. And so they all, JV, joint venture with me on different fourplexes and investments, and they all track their passive income, and they're pretty competitive kids. And so, first Sunday of each month, we sit down, measure each investment, passive income. There's like a little scorecard, and they're all competing on who can have the most passive income. My son's goal is to have a fourplex by the time he gets to college. And, but for me, passive income is really important. Like real estate's created this freedom for me in my own life. And so to see my kids really latch onto that, and it's not forced at all. They just say, hey, mom and dad are really passionate about this. It's what they do, and they want to learn, and kids are so impressionable at those younger ages. I think if we can teach some of those principles, and not to mention, the public education system doesn't teach anything about most of these financial principles, right? How to do your taxes, how passive income works, how leverage works, responsible leverage, so many different things, which is really, it's kind of a rabbit hole. But I want my kids to be set up to understand these principles to be able to go out and thrive in life. And, a fun story on that one is my oldest daughter, she wanted a Tesla Model 3 for her first car when she was turning 16. And when she first asked, like the first, dozen times, I'm like, absolutely not. That's a hard no. It seems irresponsible. And then I realized the higher quality response is saying, hey, you can have whatever you want, if it's a depreciating asset. But the right way of approaching that is, how can I create enough passive income to be able to pay for that depreciating asset? And so we ended up, selling off some of our cryptocurrency, some of our stock holdings, and we put that into a fourplex over in Vineyard. And that created almost enough passive income to pay for the entire lease payment. And then on top of that, we say, we'll pay you, whatever per hour to be the Uber driver, to drive your siblings around all their, sports events and, dance recitals. And so now she's making money, positive cash flow because of that. Her initial investment is into an appreciating asset, and she's learning at the same time, and she's helping mom out. So it's a true win-win-win situation, right? But it's just, so, for me at least, I love being able to teach some of those things to my kids. It's been really, for sure, really fun. And then also, we created the Allred Family Foundation. And so each of my 4 kids are on the board of directors, and they get to choose so a portion of their salary that I pay them goes into the foundation, and they get to each choose, which charity they want to support, right? My son's helping Wounded Warrior Project. My daughter's helping a few different causes. My other daughter's helping single mothers. But anyway, and my youngest, she's only 10, and she's helping the local animal shelter. So we'll take over, a little, some cash and hand it to them. But, I think kids learn the best through participation, more so than just being, hearing something. And so to actually have them involved in that, it's been, and teaching that concept that the more you give, the more you live.
That's beautiful. Quick question for you, Dave, which reminds me of, what does winning look like for you now, and how has that changed over the years?
Well, that's a great question. I would say that winning right now in my life looks like, I would say, well, my goal right now, my mission is to help, at least 10 million people, to create direct value for 10 million people. Mm-hmm. I also want to help at least 1,000 people create true financial freedom through passive income real estate. It's also buying back my time. I've been kind of hyper-focused on that the last 2 years on how, Dan Martell and I become friends, and he has this book called Buy Back Your Time. And so I have 23 things that I've been able to delegate in the last year or two. And that's been a great way to be able to free up more time for my family as well as for Axie partners. On top of that, what I'd say winning looks like is love in the home. It's really beautiful how, probably a dozen times a day I hear my wife and my kids just telling each other they love each other. It's really cool. My oldest daughter went to Paris for 6 weeks. She comes back tomorrow on a study abroad. And right now my kids are all at home making posters for her about how much they miss her and love her and stuff, right? It's really beautiful. In fact, I'd say that's probably the number one answer is love at home, right? Where that bond and that relationship between the family and how they celebrate. In that same vein, my wife and I just celebrated our 20th anniversary, and she'd always wanted to go to Santorini, Greece. And so we flew out there with the 4 kids and rented a yacht for 10 days, just sailing around, and then had this beautiful, I call it a wedding 2.0, like a vow renewal type thing. And it was so cool, man. We're up on a cliff looking over Santorini, and my little girl, she was a ring bearer, and we had vows, and my wife's just bawling. She only had like 2 paragraphs to read through, and it took her like 5 minutes.
That's amazing.
But it was so beautiful, man. It was definitely my favorite week of my life, and to have your kids there to be able to experience that, not just see it, but to feel it, right? The emotion, the love behind all of that was really special. So that's what I feel like winning is impact, right? For a lot of people, value creation. It's being in control of, being in the driver's seat instead of the passenger seat, and being able to really drive the direction of your life based on where you are called and where you're really pulled to. And then, it's those relationships. And one last thing I'd share, though, is when I look back at my life, what I want my life, I feel like when I'm on my deathbed, looking back at my life and I'm measuring my life, I feel like the 3 things that are going to be the most important to Dave Allred is experiences, relationships, and memories, right? Experiences, relationships, and memories. And I know if I've focused on those throughout the journey, I'm not going to have any regrets at the end of my life.
That's so cool. And I had Jeff Gardner on here last, the bucked up guy, and that's exactly what he was saying. That is, like, you'll never regret spending money on experiences, especially when it's with your family. And I went back home and told my wife that, and she was ecstatic to know that we're going to be traveling more. But Dave,
speaking of which, real quick, I love travel. It's been a big thing for me. I think we've gone, 65 countries or so now. And for me, one of the ways I kind of balance the entrepreneurialism and so much, stress and work is adventure. It's getting out and actually having a great time, enjoying it. And, with the kids, it's great for them to get outside of the country. I think it helps them really appreciate what we have here. They're more patriotic, and they feel less entitled, right? When you see just how lucky we really are here in the United States. And, I love travel, man. Like, that's a huge part of it. We try to do at least, 3 to 4 international trips per year. But then also with my wife, we do a date night every Friday night, but then at least every other month we'll do like an offsite. We'll go, just go jump in a hotel somewhere, go do a cruise, go on a vacation. And that's been a great way to really invest in that relationship and make sure we're not neglecting that part of it.
Dude, that's beautiful. I love it. a question too. You talk about, I mean, these life lessons, or I should say life lessons with your kids, of teaching them how to run businesses, teaching them things that schools won't teach them, right? Taxes, cash flow, etc. But you talk about like love at home on the other side of it too, right? And so what are some things that you do with your kids now to like build that deeper sense of love? Maybe not as much the business side and those lessons, but more so like that deep connection with your kids.
Yeah, great question, man. A few things so come to mind. So Tuesdays are my dad-daughter dates. Mm-hmm. So I've got 4 kids. We're a father-son hang sesh, we call it, right? But so every Tuesday I get one kid per month, and we go do whatever they want to go do, right? And we have some of the most amazing conversations. And I will say, it hits different when it's one-on-one, even versus like, with 2 kids. Like the amount of vulnerability, authenticity, the depth of the conversation is really incredible. So I love that. And that's something that I think they'll hold on, they'll remember that the rest of their lives. And so that's been really cool. Another one is 8 o'clock playtime. So, I have late nights sometimes in the office and whatnot, but 8 o'clock is a non-negotiable with my kids. If I'm in my office on a phone call or anything, they'll barge in, hey, Dad's 8 o'clock. It's only 30 to 45 minutes, so it's not a lot of quantity, but it's quality time. And truth be told, I don't spend a lot of time with my kids, Monday through Friday, but it's just that quality 30 to 45 minutes is really meaningful for them. And frankly, I actually look forward to it a lot. It's fun. It's kind of like kind of decompress from the day a little bit there. So that's been fun. Besides that, it's, as a real estate guy, one thing that I've really tried to focus on is experiences. That idea of, I don't want to buy things, I want to buy experiences. And so, buying second homes. So we have, a second home in Park City and a couple down in St. George, and looking at a few other markets as well. And they're places I love to travel to, my family loves, but they're also rental properties. So we're not there. It's in a short-term rental, it's in the rental pool. And so we're able to make it a cash flowing business. You get all the tax benefits, everything's basically a tax deduction because it's also it's an investment property. Mm-hmm. So it's been a fun way to be able to create some of those experiences. But then also still, keep it in the business and teach the kids more about real estate, because we're actually doing site visits and property inspections when we're out there on site. But yeah, I think that a few more things to add on that would be the family foundation. Again, we already talked about that a little bit. Having them come to the office. About once per quarter, I try to have one of my kids come into the office for a full day with Dad at work. And that's a great way, man, for them to see real world business, right? How we talk, how we interact, how to close a deal. And that's so much more impactful than them just, sitting in a classroom or me trying to teach them something, in a conversation. And so that's been awesome, man. So if any of you business owners that have the opportunity to do that with kids, just pull them in the office for the day. And sometimes I think a limiting belief is, well, that might look unprofessional, or if I go into a business lunch with an investor. But if you just preface it beforehand, I've actually had 99% of the time, like, dude, that's so cool you're doing that. 100%, yeah, your son can come sit on this lunch. So that's been fun. Besides that, I'm sure there's a lot more, but yeah, there's a couple.
That's great.
Things.
That's great, Dave. Definitely things that I want to implement for sure. And I like how it's structured too, of how you say once a quarter or Tuesday or this, especially for my brain. Having systems and routine isn't like monumental. So I appreciate you sharing that. One question that I like to ask on this podcast is, we talk about entrepreneurship, and a lot of people are afraid of entrepreneurship, and honestly for the right reasons, in my opinion. Not everyone's cut out for it. It's instead of the linear pot, like 2 paychecks a month, the security behind a 9 to 5, entrepreneurship's almost the opposite, right? Like it's a roller coaster, to say the least. And so how I visualize this question is, when you're at that bottom of that roller coaster, you don't know how much farther it's going to go down. You don't know you're at the bottom. And there's always those dips in entrepreneurship. Like, how do you stand up for your family? Like, how do you still be, and no one's perfect. Like, I understand that. But maybe what are some practices, some lessons you've learned along the way when you have those dips and you still want to be a good husband, you still want to be a good father?
So to clarify more, how do I still show up, you know, as a father, as a husband, or more on the financial side?
As a husband and a father, when things in entrepreneurship aren't going well, maybe a loss, maybe a dip in the market, whatever it might be.
Yeah. You know, I think that the key for me has just been realizing that I mean, in my whole life, like, you know, when it's really hard, you know, it's a learning opportunity, and you just got to make sure you frame it that way. And this is you know, when it's really challenging, in your mind, instead of, you know, feeling bad for yourself or thinking about how letting fear in about how much worse it could get, just looking for the opportunity and looking for the lesson to learn from that. And because my best lessons learned in my life have been from my failures. With my kids, as they launched their businesses last year, I had to remind them over and over, hey, if you fail, I actually don't really care. I'm going to be really proud of you for trying, but fail fast and fail forward. You know, learn from it. And I've told my kids this a million times, and I personally live by this. You know, one of the biggest regrets on people's deathbeds when they look back at it, their life, is not having taken their shots, right? It's having played small. It's not having pursued what was in their heart and taking shots at it, right? Number two, biggest regret is not having spent enough time with the people they care about. And so I think it's important. I'd rather see my kids be courageous, brave, go out, take their shots. You know, you miss 100% shots you don't take. And so, you know, a little bit of failure along the way is part of life. And I think we need to normalize that a little bit more and not be so hard on ourselves when we have some of those challenges. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. Besides that, I would say, again, having a supportive wife in place is very helpful. And it goes back, and the last thing I'd say is it goes back to those 10 different categories in my lifestyle design, right? If my business isn't doing great, or you know, loss on an investment, but my health's in check, you know, and my relationship with my kids and my wife is good, and my spirituality is solid, and I have all these different things, my social life, everything's all, you know, pretty dialed in, more of a 360 perspective. It's actually not that big of a deal, because it puts into perspective that's just one part of the game. It's not the entire game.
I love it. And that's harder said than done, for sure. Like, as someone that's practicing that,
especially as a new dad, right?
Yeah.
Or even with a new family, because that just hits so much different, man. Because it's not just you, and now it's your squad, right? It's your family, and they're depending on you. But on the flip side, that, at least for me, that was one of the greatest motivators, right? When you're out there knocking doors or doing whatever you're doing, like, just it's so hard, right? Yeah. But when it's not just about you, it's a bigger cause than that. If that's, again, kind of framed correctly, it's a huge motivator.
I always say, when it was me, myself, and I, life was easy. I didn't have a drive. It's like I could live off PB and jelly and run. But when I got married, like, it started that next chapter of my life and brought some motivation. And then when I had my kid 7.5 months ago, everything changed. And it's interesting, because it's like your wife's going through pregnancy. This is my experience, at least. My wife's pregnant. I'm dealing with my wife. She's my focus, because pregnancy is not easy, especially hers. And then all of a sudden, the doctor's like, all right, you're good to go home with this baby. And your life completely changes. It's weird. It's like this shift biologically that just says it's not about you. It's not about... So it's been cool to experience that and learn. It's definitely not easy, but it's been fun to experience. And, like, the simplest form of joy, the love was just given, which I've never experienced in my life, of just, like, going from literally, like, 0 to 100 of loving this kid more than you can ever comprehend. And it's been a special thing. So I'm like... Yeah, I don't think you understand the depths of my gratitude for learning little bits and pieces from people like you, because that little girl, my Gigi, like, she's my world, but I'm learning every day, and I don't want to mess it up. And so it's a scary endeavor, but it's been fun.
Thanks for sharing that, man. That's beautiful. Yeah. Times that by 4 for me, right? It's like, it's a lot, man. But I will say that hands down, if you ask me what I'm most proud of, right, out of, the things we've talked about, hands down, easy answer, it's my kids. It's the family, right? Like that's where, at least for me, that's where the fulfillment comes from. If I close on a $50 million real estate transaction, or we close out a big fund, it's nice. It's a win, right? But frankly, at least for me, it's like, okay, well, what's next? And it's it feels good for the win, but it's not really, doesn't really create true happiness per se. What it does for me, it's the family. It's those relationships. It's the, I don't know, like that. Yeah, it's like you and I are very similar in that.
Yeah.
Like that is really what, at the end of the day, I think really matters the most. And I love this expression that says, I try to live by this, that I am a family man with a business, not a businessman with a family, right? And that's a quote from a mastermind I've been a part of called Front Row Dads. But, which, by the way, anybody that's looking to try to up level as a dad, it's a pretty cool program. It's literally just like 250 guys, CEOs, business guys, and they just get together and talk about best practices and how to be a better dad. It's kind of cool. Like,
that's great.
I've been a part of a lot of masterminds and strategic groups, and that's the only, it's very differentiated, where you can actually step back for a day or two and just really focus on the deep work and what really matters the most.
How can people find out more about that?
Just
Front Row
social
Dads,
media,
like Google,
probably website, Front Row Dads.
Yeah, I'm sure it's easier to find than I think. Well, Dave, one thing, we talked about this before we started recording, of just Utah County specifically being a very unique place to where success financially is a big motivator, but it's met with people that have a strong desire to have a strong family and to be a good dad, to be a good husband. What advice, like generic, whatever it might be, specific advice do you have for this audience of people that are shooting for both?
I would say get very specific on what that means to you, right? Mm-hmm. I think that definition can range, it can vary widely. And so the more specificity you can get to it, then the more likely you're going to be able to hit that target, right? If it's just this vague kind of a concept or an idea, it's hard to really create emotion behind that. And I think human behavior is mainly driven by emotion, right? It's what we feel. And so if you can really feel into what that means to have financial success or time freedom or, a loving family, and even if you don't have that yet, but you can really spend the time to envision that, then you can create the emotion around that, right? I can remember when I was out working, knocking doors and hating the job, right? And I was like, envisioning, this marriage and my kids and their actual honeymoon, and, being able to pay for this beautiful wedding and being able to go snowboarding with my grandkids when I'm 80 years old. And the more I can envision that, then it creates a lot more emotion and it creates a lot more motivation for me. The bigger the why, the easier the how. And so I think just getting really crystal clear, which, by the way, it's not easy to do. It takes a lot of time and effort, and it's a moving target, right? So as you go through life, that's going to move a little bit, but, stand for something. Know what your priorities really are. And the nice thing there is then you know what to say no to, right? And I think a lot of times entrepreneurs specifically, it's that shiny object syndrome. We always want to chase these new ideas and whatnot. And one thing that served me very well is identifying my non-negotiables, right? So I have 10 non-negotiables. For example, I'll never put money over friendships. Like, it's just a commitment that I've made. I'm never going to trade my time directly for money, right? I don't like the idea of, anyway, there's a whole bunch of them. But those are really important because people always say what they're going to do, but very few people have taken the time to say what they're not willing to do. And I think that as you scale a business or businesses and families and everything else in life, the more you really have to learn to be able to say no to more, to be able to really go and focus on what you really do want to be doing in your life. Because every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else.
For sure. And I love what you said with that too, because I mean, there's a saying, it's called like, I'll understand your priorities based on where you're devoting your resources, right? Whether it's time, capital, et cetera, and buying back your
Dan
time.
Martell says it really well. He says about priorities, he says, show me your calendar and your bank account, and I'll show you where your true priorities are.
Yeah, beautifully said. And that's like you buying back your time is in turn directly allowing you to spend more time with your family or however you choose to do it, which I love that. Dave, I see when you're 17, you're going through this craziness of your life. I can see why you have this mentality to just go and crush it, right? Because you don't have anything. You had to figure things out for yourself, and you had this burning motivation, I assume, to figure it out, right?
Yeah, I had no idea, for the record, how I was going to do that. I just had this extreme ambition, like, hey, I'm gonna figure it out, whatever that looks like. And one of my favorite quotes back then, I actually had a poster in my bedroom as a kid, and it was one of my favorite athletes, Jerry Rice, and his quote was on the bottom of the poster, and it said, "I will do today what others won't, so that tomorrow I can have the life that others can't." And that's kind of ingrained in me, like, I'm going to go do whatever it takes to be able to have the life that I really want in the future.
That's beautiful. And then my one last follow-up question is, what keeps you motivated today? Like if I feel like you are, by my standards, financially free, you don't have to work another day in your life. Like what keeps Dave Allred rolling in the business world right now?
I've always been highly motivated with value creation and trying to create value for other people. And so that's something that's really meaningful for me. Relationships, to be able to, continue to expand that, and also just to figure out what Dave Allred's potential is. It's interesting. I look back at Dave, when I was 20 years old, at the time I thought I was crushing it. I was, doing some big things. And then when I'm 30, looking back at 20, I'm like, man, you were playing so small, right? But at 30 years old, I was like, dude, this is great, right? This is awesome. At 40 years old, looking back at 30, I was like, man, dude, you're playing so small, man. You could be doing so much more, and I hope that when I'm 50, I look back at where I'm at 44 and be like, hey, man, you were still, not hitting your potential. I hope that when I'm 100 years old, looking back at 90, I'm like, hey, man, you could have been doing a lot more, right? Yeah. So for me, it's always been fun, and it's always driven me, is just that pursuit of excellence, that pursuit of figuring out our potential. I get a lot of energy from that. And so I think that's important to me. I'd also add that what winning looks like to me at this point in my life is being in a flow state, right? Where it's more about optimization versus just building and grinding so much, and really trying to, actually, let me say it this way. One of my big goals right now is really to lead from the heart. And, I've always been so very much in my mind, very cerebral, these spreadsheets. My wife makes fun of me because I always have so many spreadsheets. You have to make a decision. It's pros and cons on a spreadsheet, right? But it's really to lead from the heart. And as a father, as a husband, as a CEO, as an investor, and listen more and follow my heart more, and to be able to help create more impact.
I love it. Well, Dave, that's a good note to end on. I appreciate you jumping on here. Seriously, I know there's going to be a lot of value from the listeners, so I appreciate your time. That's so precious. Thanks for jumping on, dude.
Tanner, thanks for having me, and congratulations on the new addition for your family.
Thanks, brother.